The sun was setting, casting a warm golden glow over the small diner tucked away on the corner of Maple Street. It wasn't the kind of place that caught people's attention at first glance. The sign above the door flickered faintly, and the paint on the walls had begun to peel in places. But for those who knew it well, this little diner was more than just a building. It was a piece of history. For Michael Thompson, the CEO of a sprawling chain of restaurants, it held even deeper meaning. This was where he had started his journey decades ago, scrubbing dishes and waiting tables, dreaming of something bigger. Now, as he stood outside in his casual clothes, a pair of faded jeans and an old hoodie, he felt a strange mix of nostalgia and unease. Michael had heard rumors about this particular location struggling to stay afloat. Once bustling with customers, it now seemed quieter, almost forgotten. He wanted to know why. Instead of sending someone else to investigate, he decided to go undercover. After all, no one would recognize him dressed like this. He pushed open the door, hearing the familiar jingle of the bell overhead. The smell hit him instantly: coffee, grease, and something sweet baking in the oven. It was comforting, yet there was an underlying tension in the air, as if the diner itself was holding its breath. The interior hadn't changed much since his early days here. The same cracked vinyl booths lined the walls, and the counter still bore faint scratches from years of use. A few patrons sat scattered around, sipping coffee or munching on sandwiches. At the far end of the room, a young woman moved between tables, balancing plates with practiced ease. She looked tired, her dark hair pulled back into a messy ponytail, but she smiled politely as she served each customer. Something about her caught Michael's eye. There was a heaviness in her movements, a weariness that didn't match her age. He slid into a booth near the window, picking up the menu propped against the condiment holder. As he scanned the options, he couldn't help but notice how worn the laminated pages were. Some items had been crossed out with permanent marker, while others had handwritten notes scribbled beside them. Clearly things weren't running smoothly here. When the waitress finally approached him, notepad in hand, Michael glanced up. Up close, he could see the exhaustion etched into her face. Her name tag read Lila, and her voice was soft but steady as she asked what he'd like to order. "I'll have the cheeseburger and fries," Michael replied, keeping his tone casual. Lila nodded, jotting down his request without hesitation. But as she turned to leave, Michael noticed her hands trembling slightly. It was such a subtle detail that most people might have missed it, but it stuck with him. What was causing her? Nerves? Was it the pressure of work, or was there something else going on? While waiting for his food, Michael took in the details around him. The diner felt empty, despite the handful of customers. The jukebox in the corner played a slow tune, its volume barely audible over the clinking of dishes in the kitchen. Occasionally, voices drifted through the swinging door leading to the back. Most of the time they were indistinct murmurs, but then came a sound that made Michael pause. Soft crying. His brow furrowed as he strained to listen. Who was crying? And why? Lila returned shortly, carrying his plate carefully. Her expression was neutral, though her eyes avoided meeting his. She set the food down quickly, mumbling a quiet, "Here, you go," before retreating toward the kitchen. Michael watched her go, his curiosity growing. He picked up his burger, taking a bite, but his mind wasn't on the taste. Something was wrong here, and he needed to figure out what. As he ate, he tried to piece together what little information he had. Lila seemed overwhelmed, perhaps even scared. The diner itself appeared neglected, with outdated menus and furniture showing signs of disrepair. And then there was the crying. Had it been Lila, or someone else entirely? Whatever the case, Michael couldn't ignore the sinking feeling in his gut. This wasn't just a struggling business. It was a place filled with hidden pain. Finishing his meal, Michael flagged Lila down again, asking for a refill on his soda. She obliged, filling his glass silently. This time, however, he took the opportunity to study her more closely. Her uniform was clean but wrinkled, as if she hadn't had time to iron it properly. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her smile never quite reached them. Michael wanted to ask her directly what was wrong, but he knew better than to pry too soon. Instead, he thanked her and let her return to her duties. Back at his booth, Michael debated his next move. Should he confront the manager? Or should he continue observing quietly? Just then, another round of muffled voices came from the kitchen. This time they were clearer. One belonged unmistakably to Lila, her tone laced with desperation. "I don't know what else to do," she whispered, her voice breaking. "If I lose another shift, we won't make rent this month." Someone else responded softly, offering words of encouragement, but their tone suggested resignation rather than hope. Michael's jaw tightened. Rent troubles, reduced shifts. These weren't isolated problems. They pointed to larger systemic issues within the diner. He realized that staying undercover might give him insight into the root causes of these struggles. Determined to uncover the truth, he resolved to return the following day. For now, he left cash on the table, slipped out quietly, and stepped back into the cool evening air. The weight of what he'd heard lingered with him long after he drove away, fueling his determination to make things right. This part sets the stage for the story, introducing Michael's undercover mission and hinting at the challenges facing the diner and its staff. Let me know if you'd like further adjustments or continuation. The next morning, Michael arrived at the diner earlier than usual, hoping to catch a glimpse of the staff before the lunch rush began. The streets were still quiet, and the diner's neon sign buzzed faintly in the pale daylight. He pushed open the door, greeted by the same jingle of the bell that had welcomed him the day before. Inside, the atmosphere was different, less chaotic, more subdued. A few employees moved around, setting up tables and wiping down counters. The air smelled of fresh coffee brewing and butter sizzling on the griddle. It was a comforting scent, but Michael couldn't shake the tension he'd sensed during his last visit. Lila was already there, standing behind the counter with her back to him as she arranged sugar packets and napkins into neat little stacks. Her movements were methodical, almost robotic, as if she were trying to keep herself distracted from whatever weighed on her mind. Michael hesitated for a moment, then took a seat at the same booth he'd occupied the previous day. He didn't want to draw too much attention to himself, but he also needed to learn more about what was happening here. If Lila was struggling, chances were others were too, and as the CEO of the company, it was his responsibility to understand why. As the diner opened its doors to the first wave of customers, Michael observed closely. Lila greeted everyone with a polite smile, but her energy seemed forced, like she was putting on a performance for the sake of appearances. She navigated the narrow aisles between tables with practiced efficiency, balancing trays loaded with plates and cups without missing a step. Yet every so often, when she thought no one was looking, her shoulders would slump and her expression would falter. It was clear that she was carrying a heavy burden, one that went far beyond the demands of her job. Michael ordered breakfast this time, a stack of pancakes and a side of bacon, and watched as Lila brought it to him. Her hands trembled slightly again, just as they had the day before. This time, however, he noticed something else: dark smudges under her eyes, as though she hadn't slept properly in days. When she turned to leave, he called out softly, "Hey, Lila." She froze mid-step, turning back toward him with a guarded look on her face. "Everything okay?" he asked, keeping his tone casual. For a split second, Lila looked like she might actually answer. Then her mask slipped back into place and she nodded quickly. "Yeah, everything's fine," she said, her voice tight. "Let me know if you need anything else." Before Michael could say another word, she hurried away, disappearing through the swinging door into the kitchen. He sighed, leaning back against the booth. Whatever was going on, Lila clearly wasn't ready to talk about it. Not yet, anyway. But Michael wasn't about to give up. He knew that sometimes people needed space before they were willing to open up. As the morning wore on, Michael continued to observe. He struck up conversations with other customers, asking casually how often they visited the diner and whether anything had changed recently. Most of them shrugged, saying it was the same old place they'd always loved. But one elderly man sitting at the counter offered a different perspective. It's not the same as it used to be, he said, stirring creamer into his coffee. Used to be busier, livelier, now it feels empty, I guess. Empty? Michael echoed, raising an eyebrow. What do you mean? The man shrugged. Hard to explain. Feels like the heart's gone out of it. Maybe it's the staff, they seem tired, like they're just going through the motions, or maybe it's management, who knows? He chuckled bitterly. Either way, it's sad to see. Michael mulled over those words as he finished his meal. If the regulars noticed the decline, it meant the problem wasn't just internal, it was affecting the diner's reputation too. That realization only deepened his resolve to get to the bottom of things. After paying his bill, he lingered near the counter, pretending to browse through a rack of takeout menus. From this vantage point, he could hear snippets of conversation drifting from the kitchen. One voice stood out, Lila's again, softer now, tinged with frustration. I can't keep doing this, she murmured. Every time I mess up, even once, they cut my hours. How am I supposed to pay the bills if I'm barely working? Another voice responded, quieter but sympathetic. You should say something. Talk to someone higher up. They can't treat us like this. They won't listen. Lila shot back, her tone sharp. No one cares, not unless it's good news for the company. Michael's stomach churned. Cutting hours? Punishing employees for minor mistakes? These sounded like policies straight out of a toxic workplace manual. He clenched his fists beneath the counter, anger simmering beneath his calm exterior. Whoever was running this place clearly didn't understand, or didn't care, about the impact their decisions were having on the staff. And if they didn't care, then it was up to him to step in. Later that afternoon, after the lunch rush had died down, Michael approached Lila once more. She was wiping down a table near the window. Her movement slower now, as if exhaustion had finally caught up with her. He cleared his throat gently to get her attention. Hey, Lila, he said, flashing a friendly smile. Got a minute? She glanced up, surprised. Sure, she replied hesitantly. What's up? I was wondering if you could tell me a bit about the diner, Michael began, keeping his tone light. I've been coming here for years, and I feel like it's changed a lot lately. Is everything okay behind the scenes? Lila stiffened, her grip tightening on the rag in her hand. For a moment, she looked like she might walk away without answering. Then with a sigh, she sank into the booth across from him. It's complicated, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Things haven't been great for a while now. Ever since the new manager came in, it's been different. Different how? Michael prompted, leaning forward slightly. She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. He's really strict. Like, if you make one mistake, spill a drink, forget an order, he docks your hours, sometimes even suspends you without pay. And it's not just me, it's everyone. We're all walking on eggshells, scared we'll lose our jobs. Michael nodded slowly, his jaw tightening. That doesn't sound fair. It's not, Lila agreed, shaking her head. But what are we supposed to do? Complain? No one listens. Besides, most of us don't have anywhere else to go. This job pays the bills, even if it's barely enough. Her words hit Michael like a punch to the gut. Here was a young woman working tirelessly to support herself and her family, only to be treated like disposable labor by the very system that employed her. It was unacceptable, and it was happening under his watch. As the CEO, he had failed to ensure that his company upheld the values he claimed to stand for. Guilt gnawed at him, but he pushed it aside for now. There would be time to reflect later. Right now, he needed to focus on fixing things. Thanks for telling me, Michael said sincerely. I know it's not easy to talk about stuff like this. Lila shrugged, forcing a small smile. I guess it helps to vent sometimes. Anyway, I should get back to work. She stood up, smoothing her apron nervously. Thanks for listening. No problem, Michael replied, watching as she walked away. He stayed seated for a few more minutes, letting everything sink in. The diner wasn't just struggling financially. It was suffering because of poor leadership and unfair practices. Employees like Lila were being pushed to their limits, sacrificing their well-being for a paycheck that barely kept them afloat. Something had to change, and soon. When Michael finally left the diner that afternoon, his mind was racing with ideas. He knew exactly who he needed to speak to, the corporate office responsible for hiring the new manager. Someone had dropped the ball, allowing a toxic environment to fester unchecked. And as the person at the top, it was his duty to hold them accountable. But first, he needed proof. Over the next few days, he planned to dig deeper, gathering evidence of the injustices taking place within the diner's walls. Only then could he confront the powers that be and demand justice for Lila and her co-workers. As he drove home, Michael couldn't help but think about how much had changed since his early days waiting tables. Back then, the diner had been a place of hope and opportunity, a stepping stone to bigger and better things. Now it felt like a shadow of its former self, weighed down by greed and neglect. He vowed silently to restore it to its former glory, not just for himself, but for everyone who depended on it to survive. This part delves deeper into the challenges faced by Lila and the diner's staff, while building tension and empathy for the characters. Let me know if you'd like any adjustments or continuation. By the time Michael returned to the diner the following day, he had already formulated a plan. He knew that uncovering the truth wouldn't be enough. He needed concrete evidence to present to corporate headquarters. Policies like cutting employee hours for minor mistakes weren't just unfair. They were unsustainable and damaging to morale. As he walked through the door, the familiar jingle of the bell overhead seemed louder than usual, as if it were echoing his growing determination. The diner was quieter today, with only a handful of customers scattered across the room. Lila was busy wiping down tables, her movements slower now, weighed down by fatigue. She glanced up briefly when she saw him enter but quickly looked away. Michael slid into a booth near the counter, ordering coffee this time instead of a full meal. He sipped it slowly, letting the bitterness linger on his tongue as he observed the staff. The kitchen staff moved in silence, their faces tense and focused. Occasionally, sharp voices carried through the swinging doors, commands barked by someone Michael assumed was the manager. It wasn't hard to see why the atmosphere felt so oppressive. Every action seemed calculated, every movement rushed, as though everyone was afraid of making even the slightest error. Even the customers seemed subdued, their conversations hushed, compared to the lively chatter Michael remembered from years ago. After finishing his coffee, Michael decided to test the waters further. He approached the counter where an older waitress named Carol was refilling sugar bowls. She had been working at the diner for decades, judging by the faded name tag pinned to her uniform. "Hey, Carol," he said casually, leaning against the counter. "How's everything going around here?" Carol paused, glancing over her shoulder to make sure no one was listening. When she turned back, her expression was guarded. "Not great," she admitted quietly. "Things have gotten tough." "Tough how?" Michael pressed, keeping his tone friendly but curious. She hesitated, then sighed. "It's the new manager. He doesn't care about us, you know? All he cares about is numbers, sales, profits, all that stuff. If we slip up, even once, he punishes us. Cuts our hours, docks our pay, sometimes even sends us home early without warning. It's exhausting." Michael nodded, absorbing her words. "Does anyone ever complain? To corporate, maybe?" Carol snorted softly. "Complain? Sure, some of us have tried. But nothing changes. They send out emails saying they'll look into it, but nothing ever happens. Meanwhile, we're stuck here trying to survive." Her frustration was palpable, and Michael felt a pang of guilt. These employees had reached out for help, only to be ignored. How many others had suffered in silence because they didn't believe anyone would listen? He thanked Carol for speaking with him and stepped back, giving her space to continue her work. As he did, he noticed Lila standing nearby, watching them with a wary expression. Had she overheard their conversation? Later that afternoon, Michael found himself lingering near the kitchen door, pretending to browse through a stack of takeout menus. From this spot, he could hear more clearly what was happening inside. The manager's voice boomed angrily, berating someone for a misplaced order. "This isn't rocket science," he snapped. "Get it right next time or don't bother coming in tomorrow." The venom in his tone made Michael's blood boil. This wasn't leadership. It was intimidation. No wonder the staff felt trapped and demoralized. Determined to gather evidence, Michael pulled out his phone and began recording discreetly. He captured snippets of the manager's tirades, noting timestamps and details in a notebook he carried with him. Each recording added another layer to the case he was building against the man, and whoever had allowed him to run the diner this way. As the day wore on, Michael struck up more conversations with the staff, asking carefully worded questions about their experiences. One young cook confided that he had been sent home twice in the past week for burning toast, a mistake that should have been minor, but cost him half a day's wages. Another waitress revealed that she had been written up for forgetting to refill ketchup bottles during a particularly busy shift. "It's like we're being set up to fail," she muttered bitterly. Each story reinforced what Michael already suspected. The manager was using fear and punishment to control the staff, creating an environment where mistakes were inevitable and punishable. The cycle was vicious, designed to keep employees too scared to speak out. But Michael wasn't afraid. Armed with recordings, notes, and first-hand accounts, he was ready to take action. That evening, after closing time, Michael stayed behind, waiting until most of the staff had left. Only Lila remained, tidying up the last few tables. She looked surprised when she saw him still sitting there, nursing a cup of cold coffee. "You're still here?" she asked, her voice tinged with curiosity. "I wanted to talk to you," Michael replied, gesturing for her to join him. Hesitantly, she sat down across from him, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I've been listening to people today," he continued, "and I've heard some things that really concern me. About the manager, about the policies, everything." Lila's eyes widened slightly, but she didn't say anything. Encouraged by her silence, Michael leaned forward. "Look, I know this is a tough situation, but I want you to know that help is coming. Things are going to change, I promise." For a moment, Lila stared at him, disbelief written across her face. Then, slowly, her expression softened. "Why? Do you care so much?" she asked finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Michael hesitated, debating how much to reveal. In the end, he decided honesty was the best approach. "Because I used to work here," he admitted, "a long time ago. This place means something to me. And seeing what's happening now, it breaks my heart. I want to fix it." Tears welled up in Lila's eyes, but she blinked them back quickly. "Thank you," she said simply, her voice thick with emotion. "You have no idea how much that means." They talked for a while longer, with Lila sharing more about her struggles, the mounting medical bills for her mother, the constant worry about losing her job, the sleepless nights spent wondering how she would make ends meet. Michael listened intently, his resolve strengthening with every word. By the time they parted ways, he had a clearer picture of what needed to be done. Over the next few days, Michael worked tirelessly to compile his findings. He reviewed company policies, cross-referencing them with the complaints he'd gathered. He drafted a detailed report, attaching audio clips and written testimonials from the staff. When it was complete, he sent it directly to the board of directors, along with a personal note urging immediate action. "We cannot allow this kind of behavior to continue," he wrote. "Our employees deserve better. Our customers deserve better, and our company deserves better." Within hours, responses began pouring in. The board agreed to launch an investigation, sending representatives to interview the staff and review operational practices. Meanwhile, Michael took matters into his own hands, visiting the diner unannounced one morning to confront the manager face to face. The man paled when Michael introduced himself, not as a customer, but as the CEO of the entire chain. "Effective. Immediately you're suspended pending further review," Michael announced, his tone firm. "Pack your things and leave." The relief among the staff was palpable. For the first time in months, they could breathe freely, knowing that someone was finally fighting for them. Lila, in particular, seemed transformed. Her smile returned, brighter and more genuine than before. And though there was still work to be done, Michael felt a renewed sense of purpose. This diner wasn't just a business, it was a community, and communities thrived when people cared about. The days following Michael's intervention at the diner were a whirlwind of activity. News of the manager's suspension spread quickly among the staff, sparking a mix of emotions: relief, disbelief, and cautious optimism. For Lila, it felt like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders, though she remained wary. Change was good, but it didn't erase the months of stress and uncertainty she'd endured. She arrived at work each morning with a sense of apprehension, wondering if this newfound hope would last or if things would eventually revert to how they were before. Michael noticed her hesitation and made it a point to check in regularly, ensuring that she and the rest of the team felt supported during this transition. Corporate headquarters wasted no time addressing the issues at the diner. Representatives arrived within days, armed with clipboards and questionnaires designed to gather feedback from every employee. They conducted private interviews, giving the staff an opportunity to voice their concerns without fear of retaliation. Many spoke openly for the first time, sharing stories of missed rent payments, sleepless nights, and strained relationships caused by the previous manager's harsh policies. Others recounted moments when they had considered quitting altogether, only to stay because they had nowhere else to turn. The outpouring of honesty was both heartbreaking and eye-opening, painting a vivid picture of the toll that poor leadership had taken on the diner's culture. Michael attended several of these meetings, sitting quietly in the corner as employees poured their hearts out. He listened intently, his expression unreadable, but his mind raced with ideas. Each story reinforced his belief that systemic changes were needed, not just at this location but across the entire chain. Policies that penalized workers for minor mistakes had to be reevaluated. Communication channels between corporate offices and frontline staff needed improvement. And most importantly, managers should be held accountable for fostering positive, supportive environments rather than instilling fear. As the investigation progressed, Michael took additional steps to address immediate concerns. He authorized emergency financial assistance for employees struggling to make ends meet, including Lila, whose mother's medical bills had piled up over the past year. When she received the news, tears streamed down her face as she thanked him profusely. "I don't know what to say," she admitted, her voice trembling. This changes everything." "It's not charity," Michael replied gently. "You've earned it. You've worked hard and you deserve support. Consider this a start, a way to help you get back on your feet while we figure out how to make things better long term." Lila nodded, clutching the envelope containing the funds tightly in her hands. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to imagine a future where she wasn't constantly worrying about money. It was a small step, but it gave her hope, a feeling she hadn't experienced in far too long. In addition to providing financial relief, Michael implemented temporary measures to ease the burden on the staff. He hired extra part-time workers to cover shifts, allowing the existing team to catch their breath after months of relentless pressure. He also arranged for free counseling services, recognizing that the emotional toll of working under such toxic conditions couldn't be ignored. These initiatives were met with gratitude, though some employees remained skeptical, unsure whether these changes would stick once the initial wave of attention faded. To ensure transparency, Michael held a town hall meeting at the diner one evening, inviting all employees to attend. The room buzzed with nervous energy as people filed in, taking seats at tables usually reserved for customers. When Michael stepped up to speak, the chatter died down, replaced by an expectant silence. He began by acknowledging the pain and frustration that everyone had endured, apologizing on behalf of the company for failing to protect them. "What happened here was unacceptable," he said firmly. "No one should have to work in an environment where they feel undervalued or afraid. That's not who we are or who we want to be." He went on to outline specific actions the company planned to take moving forward. A new manager would be appointed immediately, someone hand-picked for their ability to lead with empathy and integrity. Training programs would be introduced to equip managers with tools to handle conflicts constructively rather than resorting to punishment. Employee feedback would become a priority, with regular surveys and open forums encouraging honest communication. Finally, Michael announced the creation of a hardship fund, designed to assist workers facing personal crises like illness, housing insecurity, or unexpected expenses. By the end of the meeting, the mood in the room had shifted dramatically. Skepticism gave way to cautious optimism as employees realized that Michael wasn't just paying lip service. He genuinely cared about making things right. Several people approached him afterward to express their gratitude, shaking his hand or offering heartfelt hugs. Lila lingered near the door, waiting until most of the crowd had dispersed before approaching him. "Thank you," she said softly, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "For everything. I never thought anyone would listen, let alone actually do something." "You deserve to be heard," Michael replied, smiling warmly. "And so does everyone else. We're going to rebuild this place together, not just as a business, but as a community." Over the next few weeks, the diner underwent a transformation. With the toxic manager gone and new policies in place, the atmosphere became lighter, more welcoming. Employees laughed and joked with each other again, their interactions less tense and more genuine. Customers noticed the change too, commenting on the renewed energy in the air. Sales began to pick up as word spread that the diner was back to its old self, or perhaps even better than before. Michael visited frequently during this period, checking in on progress and offering guidance whenever needed. He worked closely with the new manager, a kind-hearted woman named Sarah who had years of experience leading teams in high-pressure environments. Under her leadership, the staff flourished. Shift schedules became fairer, workload distribution more balanced, and morale higher than it had been in years. Employees who had once dreaded coming to work now looked forward to their shifts, eager to contribute to the diner's success. Lila, in particular, thrived under the new management, freed from the constant fear of losing hours or being punished. For minor mistakes, she rediscovered her passion for serving others. Her smile returned, brighter and more genuine than ever, and customers often complimented her warmth and attentiveness. Encouraged by Michael, she even took on additional responsibilities, helping train new hires and assisting with inventory management. It was clear that she had leadership potential, something Michael hoped to nurture further in the future. Despite the improvements, Michael knew there was still work to be done. The challenges faced by the diner were symptomatic of larger issues within the company, and addressing them required sustained effort. He called a meeting with senior executives, presenting a comprehensive plan to overhaul outdated practices and prioritize employee well-being across all locations. His proposal included mandatory training for managers, increased transparency in decision-making processes, and incentives for fostering positive workplace cultures. While some board members expressed reservations about the cost of implementing these changes, Michael stood firm. "Investing in our people isn't an expense, it's an investment in our future," he argued. "Happy employees lead to happy customers, which ultimately benefits everyone." His persistence paid off. The board approved the plan unanimously, recognizing the importance of aligning the company's values with its actions. Over the following months, similar reforms were rolled out at other diners in the chain, transforming not just individual locations, but the entire organization. Employees reported feeling more valued and supported, and customer satisfaction ratings soared as a result. For Michael, the experience was transformative. It reminded him why he had fallen in love with the restaurant industry in the first place. The sense of connection, the joy of bringing people together, and the pride of building something meaningful. He vowed never to lose sight of those principles again, committing himself to leading with compassion and integrity. One evening, as he sat in the same booth where he had first ordered a meal Undercover, Michael reflected on how far the diner had come. The worn vinyl seats had been replaced, the menus updated, and fresh flowers adorned each table. But the real change was in the people, their laughter echoing through the room, their smiles lighting up the space. Lila approached him, carrying a cup of coffee and a slice of pie. "On the house," she said with a grin. Consider it a thank you gift. Michael chuckled, accepting the offering graciously. Well, I can't argue with that. As she walked away, he took a sip of the coffee, savoring its rich flavor. For the first time in a long while, he felt truly content. The diner wasn't just surviving, it was thriving, and so was everyone who called it home. This part focuses on the resolution and rebuilding process, emphasizing the positive impact of Michael's actions while maintaining engagement through detailed storytelling. Let me know if you'd like any adjustments. Months passed and the diner continued to flourish under its new management. The transformation was remarkable, not just in terms of physical improvements but also in the renewed spirit that filled the space. Employees greeted each other warmly as they clocked in for their shifts, laughter often mingling with the clatter of dishes and sizzle of food on the grill. Customers noticed the change too, commenting on how inviting the atmosphere felt. Regulars returned more frequently, bringing friends and family along, while newcomers were drawn in by glowing reviews online. It seemed like the diner had found its rhythm again, a balance between efficiency and warmth that had been missing for so long. Michael remained closely involved, visiting regularly to check on progress and offer guidance when needed. He knew that maintaining momentum was crucial. Without consistent effort, old habits could creep back in. Each visit gave him an opportunity to connect with the staff, learning firsthand how the new policies were impacting their lives. Lila, especially, stood out as a shining example of what could happen when people were given the chance to thrive. Her confidence had grown exponentially since the days when she'd quietly endured the stress of impossible demands and dwindling hours. Now she moved through the diner with purpose, her smile genuine, and her interactions with customers polished yet personal. One afternoon, as Michael sat at his usual booth reviewing sales reports, Lila approached him with a tentative expression. "Do you have a minute?" she asked, clutching a small stack of papers in her hands. He nodded, gesturing for her to sit across from him. "What's on your mind?" She hesitated briefly before sliding the papers toward him. "I've been thinking about something," she began, her voice steady despite the nervousness flickering in her eyes. "With everything that's changed here, the support we've gotten, the training programs, I feel like I'm ready to take the next step. So, I applied for the assistant manager position." Michael's eyebrows shot up in surprise, though he quickly masked it with a broad smile. "That's fantastic, Lila. Really fantastic. Have you heard back yet?" She shook her head. "No, not yet. But I wanted you to know, just in case anyone asks, it's because of you. You believed in me when I didn't even believe in myself, and now I want to give back to help make sure no one else has to go through what we did." Her words struck a chord deep within Michael. In all his years as CEO, he had rarely encountered such raw sincerity. Most people sought promotions for personal gain or ambition, but Lila's motivation stemmed from gratitude and a desire to create positive change. It was exactly the kind of leadership philosophy he hoped to instill across the company. "Lila," he said earnestly, "if anyone deserves this role, it's you. Don't doubt yourself for a second." The interview process for the assistant manager position was rigorous, involving multiple rounds of questions and practical assessments designed to test candidates' ability to handle real-world scenarios. Lila prepared tirelessly, studying best practices, shadowing Sarah, and seeking advice from colleagues. When the final decision was announced, there was no question in Michael's mind who the right choice would be. Sure enough, Lila received the call she had been waiting for. She had earned the promotion. Her reaction was priceless. Tears streamed down her face as she hugged Sarah tightly, then turned to thank Michael. "I don't even know what to say," she admitted, laughing through her tears. "This feels like a dream." "It's not a dream," Michael replied firmly. "It's hard work paying off, and trust me, you're going to do great." As Lila settled into her new role, the diner reached new heights of success. Under her guidance, teamwork became even stronger, with employees supporting one another seamlessly during busy shifts. She introduced initiatives to celebrate milestones, hosting small parties for birthdays and work anniversaries, and encouraged open communication, ensuring everyone felt comfortable sharing ideas or concerns. Her approach resonated deeply with the staff, fostering a sense of camaraderie that radiated outward to customers. Meanwhile, Michael expanded the reforms he had implemented at this location to the rest of the chain. Training sessions focused on empathy and conflict resolution became mandatory for all managers, while employee surveys provided valuable insights into areas needing improvement. Corporate headquarters launched a mentorship program pairing seasoned leaders with rising stars like Lila, creating pathways for growth and development. These efforts paid off handsomely, as evidenced by skyrocketing employee retention rates and record-breaking profits. Despite the widespread success, Michael refused to grow complacent. He understood that true leadership meant staying vigilant, always looking for ways to improve. To that end, he established an advisory council composed of frontline workers from various locations. Their task was simple yet powerful: to represent the voices of everyday employees at the highest levels of decision-making. Meetings were held quarterly, allowing council members to present feedback directly to executives. This initiative further solidified the company's commitment to prioritizing its people over profits, a principle that set it apart from competitors. Back at the diner, life continued to hum along smoothly. The hardship fund Michael had created proved invaluable, helping employees navigate unexpected challenges without sacrificing their livelihoods. One cook used the assistance to cover car repairs after his vehicle broke down, while another waitress relied on it to afford childcare during a particularly difficult month. Knowing they had a safety net in place allowed everyone to focus on their work without constant worry about financial instability. Lila thrived in her role, earning praise from both colleagues and customers alike. Her natural ability to lead with kindness and understanding made her a beloved figure within the team. Employees often sought her advice, confident that she would listen without judgment and offer thoughtful solutions. Even customers began recognizing her contributions, frequently requesting tables in her section simply because they enjoyed interacting with her. For Michael, watching her succeed was immensely rewarding. It reinforced his belief that investing in people yielded immeasurable returns, not just in terms of business metrics, but in human connections. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm orange glow over the diner, Michael found himself reflecting on how much had changed since his initial undercover visit. What had started as a mission to uncover problems had evolved into a journey of redemption for the diner, for its staff, and perhaps most importantly, for himself. He realized that leadership wasn't about wielding power, it was about empowering others. By listening, learning, and taking decisive action, he had helped transform a struggling business into a beacon of hope and resilience. Sitting at the counter with a cup of coffee, he watched as Lila guided a new hire through the basics of taking orders efficiently. Her patience and encouragement were evident, qualities that reminded him of his own early days in the industry. As if sensing his gaze, she glanced over and smiled, waving briefly before returning her attention to the trainee. In that moment, Michael felt an overwhelming sense of pride, not just for what the diner had become, but for the individuals who had grown alongside it. Before leaving, he stopped by the kitchen to chat with the staff, thanking them for their hard work and dedication. They responded with heartfelt appreciation, expressing how much they valued the changes he had spearheaded. "We couldn't have done it without you," one cook said sincerely, echoing sentiments shared by many others. As Michael stepped outside, into the cool night air, he paused for a moment, looking back at the diner. Its neon sign glowed brightly against the dark sky, a symbol of perseverance and renewal. He thought about all the stories intertwined within those walls, stories of struggle, triumph, and transformation. Each one had shaped him in ways he hadn't anticipated, teaching him lessons about humility, empathy, and the profound impact of leading with heart. With a final glance, he climbed into his car and drove away, already planning his next visit. The road ahead still held challenges, but he faced them with unwavering determination. After all, he had seen firsthand what was possible when people came together to build something meaningful. And as long as he led with integrity and compassion, he knew the future would be bright, for the diner, for his company, and for everyone fortunate enough to be part of it. This part highlights continued growth and reinforces the themes of empowerment and transformation. Let me know if you'd like any adjustments. Months turned into a year, and the diner became more than just a place to grab a meal. It became a cornerstone of the community. The changes Michael had initiated rippled outward, touching lives far beyond those who worked or dined there. Local, schools began organizing field trips to the diner, teaching students about teamwork, customer service, and entrepreneurship. Neighboring businesses followed suit, adopting similar employee-focused practices after witnessing the diner's success. It was as if the entire neighborhood had been infused with new energy, all stemming from one man's decision to listen and act. For Leela, the past year had been nothing short of transformative. As assistant manager, she had grown into her role with remarkable ease, earning respect not only from her colleagues but also from customers who marveled at her ability to handle any situation with grace and poise. Her promotion had given her the financial stability she desperately needed, allowing her to pay off her mother's medical bills and even start saving for the future. But more importantly, it had given her confidence, a belief in herself that had once seemed unattainable. Every morning as she tied on her apron and greeted the team, she reminded herself how far she'd come. Michael visited regularly, always finding something new to admire about the diner. The worn furniture had been replaced with cozy booths upholstered in warm tones, and fresh flowers adorned every table. A mural painted by a local artist now covered one wall, depicting scenes of the neighborhood's history intertwined with images of the diner itself. Even the menu had been updated, featuring dishes inspired by staff suggestions. Customers loved the additions, particularly the Lila Special, a hearty sandwich named in honor of the woman whose resilience symbolized the diner's revival. One crisp autumn afternoon, Michael arrived to find the diner buzzing with activity. A group of senior citizens played cards in one corner while families filled the remaining tables, their laughter mingling with the aroma of freshly baked pie. Lila spotted him immediately and waved him over. "We've got a surprise for you," she said, her eyes sparkling mischievously. Before he could respond, she led him to the center of the room, where a banner hung above the counter. "Thank you, Michael." The staff gathered around, clapping and cheering as Michael stood frozen in disbelief. "What is this?" he asked, his voice tinged with emotion. "It's our way of saying thank you," Lila explained, stepping forward. "You didn't just save this diner, you changed our lives. We couldn't have done any of this without you." Speechless, Michael looked around at the faces beaming back at him. These were people he had fought for, people whose stories had driven him to take action. Seeing them happy and thriving filled him with a sense of fulfillment he hadn't experienced in years. I don't know what to say," he admitted, his voice cracking slightly. "This isn't my doing. It's yours. All of you worked so hard to make this place what it is today." But the staff wouldn't hear it. They insisted on celebrating, sharing stories of how Michael's intervention had impacted their lives. One waitress recounted how the hardship fund had helped her avoid eviction when her landlord raised the rent unexpectedly. Another cook described how the training programs had taught him skills he never thought he'd learn, opening doors to opportunities outside the diner. Each story added another layer to the tapestry of gratitude surrounding Michael, leaving him overwhelmed but deeply moved. After the impromptu celebration, Michael stayed late, helping clean up alongside the staff. It felt right to pitch in, to share in the camaraderie that defined the diner's culture. As they worked together, scrubbing tables and stacking chairs, conversations flowed freely. Someone joked about the time Lila accidentally spilled an entire tray of drinks on a customer, prompting bursts of laughter. Another reminisced about the chaos of the lunch rush, describing it as organized mayhem. Through it all, Michael listened, soaking in the warmth and connection that permeated the space. Later that evening, as the last patrons left and the lights dimmed, Michael found himself alone with Lila. She was counting receipts behind the counter, her brow furrowed in concentration. He leaned against the edge, watching her quietly. "You've done amazing things here, Lila," he said finally. "I'm proud of you." She looked up, startled by the compliment. "Me? You're the one who made all this possible. I'm just trying to keep up." "That's not true," Michael replied firmly. "You've taken ownership of this place in ways I never could. You care about the staff, the customers, the community, and it shows. This diner reflects who you are now." Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment, but she smiled nonetheless. "Thanks, Michael. That means a lot coming from you." They sat together for a while longer, talking about the future. Lila shared her dreams of eventually managing her own location someday, perhaps even mentoring others like her. Michael listened intently, offering advice and encouragement. He knew she had the potential to achieve anything she set her mind to, and he vowed to support her every step of the way. As the weeks passed, Michael continued expanding the reforms across the chain, ensuring that every diner benefited from the lessons learned at this flagship location. Employee satisfaction surveys reached record highs and profits soared as a result. Investors praised his leadership, crediting him with revitalizing the brand. Yet despite the accolades, Michael remained humble, always quick to redirect praise toward the people who truly deserved it. The frontline workers who kept the business running day in and day out. Back at headquarters, Michael introduced a new initiative aimed at fostering long-term sustainability. Recognizing that many employees face challenges outside of work, he partnered with local organizations to provide resources such as childcare assistance, mental health counseling, and educational scholarships. The program quickly gained traction, earning widespread acclaim for its innovative approach to supporting workers holistically. One evening during a company-wide conference, Michael took the stage to deliver a keynote address. Standing before hundreds of employees, managers, and executives, he reflected on the journey that had brought them here. "When I first walked into that diner Undercover, I wasn't sure what I'd find," he began, his voice steady but heartfelt. "What I discovered was a group of incredibly resilient individuals fighting against impossible odds. They reminded me why I fell in love with this industry in the first place, not because of profits or prestige, but because of the connections we create and the communities we build." He paused, scanning the audience. "Leadership isn't about titles or power, it's about serving others, it's about listening, learning, and taking action when it matters most. And that's exactly what each of you has done. Together we've proven that when we prioritize people over profits, everyone wins." The room erupted in applause, echoing Michael's words back to him. For the first time in years, he felt truly aligned with his purpose, not just as a CEO, but as a human being committed to making a difference. In the months that followed, the diner continued to thrive, becoming a model for other locations within the chain. Lila blossomed into an exceptional leader, inspiring her team to reach new heights. Customers flocked to the diner not just for the food but for the atmosphere, a perfect blend of warmth, efficiency, and authenticity. And Michael? He returned often, always finding joy in seeing how much the place had grown. On one such visit, he pulled Lila aside after closing time. "Do you remember when I first came here Undercover?" he asked, a nostalgic smile playing on his lips. "Of course," she replied, chuckling. "You ordered a cheeseburger and fries. And you were crying in the kitchen," he added gently. Lila's expression softened. "Yeah, I was scared back then, scared I wouldn't make it, but look at us now." Michael nodded, his gaze thoughtful. "Sometimes it takes hitting rock bottom to realize how strong we really are. You proved that to me, Lila. You and everyone else here showed me what's possible when we come together." They stood in silence for a moment, reflecting on how far they'd come. Then with a grin, Michael clapped his hands together. "All right, enough reminiscing. Let's get to work. Tomorrow's another busy day." Lila laughed, shaking her head. "You're impossible, you know that?" "Maybe," he admitted, winking. "But impossible is good." As they locked up the diner and stepped out into the cool night air, Michael glanced back one last time. The neon sign glowed brightly, casting a soft light over the empty street. It was more than just a building. It was a testament to resilience, compassion, and the power of believing in people. And as long as places like this existed, Michael knew the world would be a little brighter, one diner at a time. This final part wraps up the story with emotional depth and a sense of closure, while reinforcing the themes of growth, gratitude, and community. Let me know if you'd like further adjustments.